Did you cover? Hey, Ken, how are you? Good. No, I don't. Oh my. Hey, John. So my first band dad experience was rained out last Friday.
Oh yeah? Did they not play the game, or did you just?
They played the game. I think it was abbreviated, but they got it in. Thanks to the rain, they won. They were like 14-point dogs. So.
They were a 14-point underdog?
Curie? That's what. So that I didn't check it myself. That's what a couple of dads told me.
Wow.
Does that look like it's going on? Oh. Does it take a while?
Do you need this? Do you need that?
There we go. Good.
I'll tell you in a minute. I don't think so.
Okay.
Put that away.
No, I'm good. I never get that right.
Oh, there's two different ways you can do it. One sort of standing up vertical. You have it, but that goes like this then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That
Otherwise,
makes sense.
the other way it goes is to stand it up vertical.
Good grief. Hi there.
I don't think Calangelo would know who they were. Tony Bennett.
I know Pearl Jam.
Jim and Dan.
I'll turn these things off. I don't know. Then I don't put it off. I think something's wrong.
Call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
What was that?
Trustee Dodge?
Oh, I'm certainly here.
Trustee Guerra?
Here.
Trustee Ruzick?
Here.
Trustee Calandrella?
Yeah.
Trustee Carroll?
Here.
Mayor Pico?
Here.
Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of August 6, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Carroll.
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of August 6, 2018.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Carroll?
Aye.
Trustee Guerra?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye.
Approval of August 13, 2018 special meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton.
move to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees special meeting of August 13th, 2018.
Second. Any comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Approval of August 20th, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Guerra.
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of August 20th, 2018.
Second?
Any comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Orland Township Food and Pet Pantry raffle license.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Carroll.
Move to approve issuing a raffle license to the Orland Township Food and Pet Pantry to conduct a raffle at their Pet Palooza event on Saturday, September 15th, 2018 at the Orland Township.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Call the roll.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Museum Development Advisory Board appointment.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman? Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Ken.
Trustee Calandrella.
Want to do it?
Go.
I move to advise and consent the appointment of Robert Siegel, a fellow Marquette alum, to the Mayor's Development Advisory Board,
To the museum.
the Museum Development and Advisory Board.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. I'll reread it. I move to the advice and consent to the appointment of Robert Siegel to the Museum Development Advisory Board. Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Calandrella.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. And I will now swear in Mr. Siegel.
Big deal.
Your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Bob Siegel. Have been appointed to the office of the Museum Development Advisory Board. The Village of Orland Park.
The Village of Orland Park.
In the county of Cook and Will.
In the counties of Cook and Will.
Aforesaid.
Aforesaid.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Illinois.
The Constitution of the State of Illinois.
And that I will faithfully discharge
I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of the Museum Development and Advisory Board
of the Museum Development and Advisory Board
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Bob said beforehand he wants 10 minutes on the mic after he's done.
They've said everything already.
Congratulations.
Ready?
Yep.
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda. A, payroll for August 24, 2018. B, accounts payable from August 21st, 2018 through September 4th, 2018 approval. C, well number 11 Illinois State Water Survey groundwater monitoring intergovernmental agreement. Item D, Fernway subdivision roadway and ditch grading improvements 2018 bid and construction engineering services proposal. E, 2018 Southwest Conference of Mayors municipal auction disposal of vehicles and equipment ordinance. F, disposal of village equipment online auction, equipment from Public Works Department and Orland Park Health and Fitness Center ordinance. Item G, 2018 Land Development Code amendments to H, public utility easement agreements with EcoSite 2 LLC for utility services for monopole at Public Works Building, 15655 Virginia Avenue ordinance. Item I, Smith Crossing Phase 3 expansion, 10501 Emily Lane ordinance. Item J, Hay and Associates, Inc., Plan Review and Landscape Architect Services Contract Adjustment and Extension. Item K, Verizon Wireless Monopole, 15100 80th Avenue, Special Use Permit with Modifications. Item L, real estate brokerage services selection agreement with Rich Real Estate. Is there any items to take off the consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Carroll.
move to approve the consent agenda, items A through L.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calendrello.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Village Hall Green Roof Project.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Ruzick.
I move to approve the proposal from Echo Gardens LLC as the subject matter expert to perform all duties and responsibilities outlined in RFP 18-038 Village Hall Green Roof Project for an amount not to exceed $51,000.
Second.
Could we get the background on this?
So we issued an RFP for this project in early August to get subject matter experts to help us identify and install green roofs on the eastern and western decks of our Village Hall. And we received 2 proposals, one from Apropos, which was for $60,000, and one from Echo Gardens. And we formed a selection committee comprised of the Development Services and Parks Department, and the team members selected the lowest priced proposal by Echo Garden, and our intent is to provide offer this project to them with installation be provided by our Parks and Public Works Department. There are some ADA ramps that has to be installed on the eastern half of our building to allow ADA access to our eastern deck. The western deck will not have any access for public. The installation will be done by our Parks Department. And the advantage on that, and going beyond that, is that our staff will be trained by this subject matter expert that will allow us to maintain and operate this green roof, as well as install future green roofs when they come to us, for example, at the open land building that we're working on. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Ruzick.
One comment I was going to make is that the funding for this is coming from our tree mitigation fund, which is basically a fund when a developer comes into town and needs to take down trees as part of their development. In lieu, we take a cash payment for those trees that we've agreed to let them take down. So this is, and it's only used for these type of projects, which actually this is the first of our kind for this.
This is, the fund you're referring to, Trustee Ruzick, is Tree Preservation and Green Infrastructure Account, where the board has authorized us in the past to spend up to $70,000 for this purpose. And this RFP will allow us to do it under budget project, and we'll still have $19,000 left in that account.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Calendrello.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
An ordinance providing for issuance of general obligation refunding bonds.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Carroll.
ordinance number, please.
5329.
I move to pass ordinance number 5329 entitled, "An Ordinance Providing for the Issuance of Not to Exceed $2,950,000 General Obligation Refunding Bonds, Series 2018 of the Village of Orland Park, Cook and Will Counties, Illinois, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of said village, providing for the levy and collection of a direct annual tax for the payment of the principal of and interest on said bonds, authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof, and authorizing the execution of a bond order and an escrow letter agreement in connection therewith.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Dodge.
a question for Anne Marie. So roughly, what's the expectation for the interest rate we might get in the market and what we're replacing?
Well, we're not exactly sure what we'll get.
Right.
It's going to be under the 4% parameter that we're setting. Kevin McCann is actually here from Spear Financial and could probably give you more detailed information, but the parameters are all listed here, and unless we meet all of the requirements, the bonds won't actually be refunded.
Okay.
Good evening. The bonds outstanding are 3.5%. We're hoping to get about 2.25 to 2.5.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So in layman's terms, for everyone that's maybe watching watching this or in attendance, we are not issuing new bonds. We are basically refinancing bonds we already have.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Dodge.
one more question. Did we, were we re-rated, or was a previous rating used, and what is that rating?
Yeah, we did not, well, we right now have a AA+ rating, and an A1A from Moody's. We did not go through a rating process. We're doing this sale a little bit differently than we usually do. We usually issue as a competitive sale, and this is going to be a negotiated sale for a number of reasons, mostly just the small dollar amount of the issuance. So we did not go forward and get a rating because we'll be able to get purchasers without doing that and incurring that expense.
But our rating's holding.
Our rating is good.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Carroll.
And just to kind of further explain like you did, as Director Mampy mentioned, there are some criteria that must be met before we'll do this refund. One of them is that there would be a minimum savings of $50,000 to the village.
And that's net of all costs.
Correct. So the sale would not take place unless we were able to net 50,000 savings.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Trustee Garrett.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Budget update.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Carroll.
I had several meetings since the last part of our budget cycle, which is the revenue hearing that we had last month, with the village management staff and Director Mampy and her staff, and kind of got the consensus from them and also from my perception of how the revenue hearing went, that maybe the board didn't give real clear direction on the revenue side to staff. We gave some assurances that we were supporting new streams of revenue almost as a hypothetical or in theory, and I think as one of the trustees mentioned, as a hypothetical exercise on multiple occasions. Having met with the finance team and the village management team since then, I've discovered how much that put them kind of in turmoil as to how to proceed with our budget process. So we're kind of breaking with how we had originally planned on doing it to discuss expenditure cuts, because one of the assumptions that we made after, both before and after the last meeting, is that there would be an equivalent number of savings in dollars of expenses and an equivalent number or a matching number of dollars in new revenue. So I think what I've talked to Mr. Lamargo about and Director Mampy is that they give us a presentation, most of which will be an open session. There's one section that has to be an executive session to talk about specific expenditure cuts. And what we're hoping to accomplish today is to make the tough decisions that I think we were starting to make at the revenue hearing, but didn't quite complete, in my estimation, the tough decisions on revenue going forward, because I think we've all agreed and we've all commented in the past that we don't want to do a one-year Band-Aid again for our 20% fund budget policy. We want to have a program in place that will provide us financial stability long-term. When I say long-term, I'm talking 5 years. So I have asked Mr. Lamargo and Director Mampy to kind of talk to us about these expenditure cuts. And Joe, if you could take it from there, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Carroll. So the board is where we have looked at trying to run as lean, as efficient as possible. However, with the current position the village is in, we had to look at another way to maintain the board's 20% fund balance policy. As I stated at the beginning of the year, we have and continue to identify and started to implement several Lean Six Sigma projects and HPO initiatives that are going to make us leaner. They haven't, okay, is that better? Just to recap, at the last budget workshop, myself and my budget team reported back on how much revenue could be collected on the potential new revenue. On the potential new revenue sources that were identified. At the conclusion of that meeting, the board had a consensus of approximately about $1.042 million in potential new revenues that would be dedicated to the operational budget. This would not include the $545,580 dedicated specifically to fund the police pension. The board had directed staff to reduce expenses by the same amount in the general fund. However, since an increase of $1.042 million of revenue and a decrease of that same amount would not get us to the required 20% fund balance policy or help us in the future years, my budget team and I needed to identify additional reductions in the total amount of $1.267 million. With that, I'm going to go over, as Chairman Carroll had stated, I'm going to go over a couple of the items that we could discuss outside of closed session, and then we'll need to go into closed session to discuss the remainder of those. So the first one was this discontinuation of the Parents Improvement Grant. It's a one-time savings. It's about $350,000 in that program. This program has seldom been used over the last several years, Earlier in the year, if the board recalls, we actually increased that amount awarded from $25,000 to $50,000, but still little to no interest in the program. So we thought, instead of just keep funding that, encumbering those dollars, that we would use that as part of our savings there to help with the balance. The second piece that we looked at here was our insurance plan, the overall insurance plan. And we identified about $304,863 in savings. We were able to obtain that savings through the continued focus on consumerism, wellness, and choice, along with the implementation of an employee contribution model more in line with industry standards starting in 2019. The remaining $612,328 in reductions will need to be discussed in closed session. I'd just like to add that any reductions that are being recommended were identified as having the least amount of impact on the organization or the community. Between the new revenue and reduction of expenses, we're able to exceed the 20% fund balance in 2019, but in addition, make the village fiscally stable for the next several years. My team and I will continue to identify efficiencies and possible cost savings throughout this budget process, not just what we're presenting tonight or in closed session, as we always do. I'd like to just add one thing that, lastly, that this fiscal position that we are making assumes that there will be no additional new special events or programs, but there are also no additional cuts to any special events or programs either. So I don't know if you want to show the one slide over the next.
I don't know, is there any
Is
questions
there any questions, any
or
of
comments?
what I've said?
Trustee Fenton?
Will we be getting this? Because we don't have it in our laptop. We don't have a hard copy.
Right.
Are we going to get this information?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Dodge?
Yeah, so just to kind of go back to some of the opening comments, when we had that budget meeting, the structure of my argument was everything with revenue discussions is hypothetical until I see the deep structural changes, Joe, you've been charged with making with the village.
Correct.
And so I'm not entirely a fan of sequencing this discussion in this order because there's two sides of an equation here. So let me be emphatically clear again. I thought we were clear in an early budget discussion about a dollar for dollar change, and I thought the numbers were higher than what we're seeing here, but let's continue to have the conversation because this is a process, and until then, it is a hypothetical, especially with revenue increases. And I can't recall in the last 30 years where I've bumped into anybody from Orland Park and they said, raise my taxes. I just failed to remember when that incident happened in my life. And so I'm not going to let the pressure off of you guys to keep going after our cost structure because we, like every other municipality, in the state of Illinois that I know of, we're facing a cost structure problem. Full stop. And so we've got a tough problem to solve for. And yes, there's some contextual things that we need to address. What's changing in American retail and how we fix that. But we've got a hell of a lot of work to do. And I think at some point we're going to have a pretty candid conversation with the people of Orland Park, which is, how much do you want and how much do you want to pay for it? Because I've said it before, the magic money tree ain't what it used to be in terms of the mall's revenue. And so as we go and look at every line item in this budget, what else do you not really value? Because I can't think of anybody who's come up to me and said, sure, raise my taxes. So I want to make sure that we've, we tackle all that. So I'm happy to have these conversations, but still, until we address some of the structural issues, and it's not just reducing heads. Let's be clear about that. It's attacking the cost. And there's a total cost here. There's the salaries, there's the benefits, and the implicit growth assumptions in all of that, which is the real problem. So this is not about jobs here or jobs not here. It's what are we doing about bending the cost curve? So we've got a hell of a lot of work to do as a board, but I just want to be emphatically clear. Any conversations I have regarding revenue, I'm going to push you guys pretty damn hard on the cost structural issues. We've been talking about this for a decade. Day of reckoning's here. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Carroll.
I agree with much of what Trustee Dodge said, but there are some realities that we can't escape. And I agree. I've never had a resident ask me to raise their taxes, although there were a few residents that sent me emails during the gaming discussion where they said they'd rather the property taxes go up than have that be an additional revenue stream. So there have actually been some, but they're few and far between. But the reality is, this village, as we've used the phrase kick the can down the road for so many years, and speaking with elected officials in other villages, I can't think of too many other municipalities that have gone as long as we have without raising our levy at all. If I'm not mistaken, it's 12 out of the last 14 years. As a result, the fund balance policy, which was set years and years ago, that requires us to keep a reserve of 20% of our operating budget on hand at all times, has come to an end if we don't take some steps to increase revenue. Now, at the revenue hearing, we had long conversations about what those steps might look like. We had long conversations about whether we're going to have this be a one-time fix again and kick the can further down the road for next year's board to worry about, or whether we're going to take some steps to try and craft a longer-term solution. And I'm all in favor of cutting costs, and we've looked at that time and time again, and unfortunately, some of the solutions that this board has directed Village Manager Lamargo and his team to put in place are not short-term fixes. The high-performing organization was something we began exploring in July of 2015. The studies that we're using consultants on right now, both for our salary structure and for our efficiency, are studies that haven't been done in 8 or 9 years. They're going to take several months still to complete. Statutorily, we have to have our budget done by December. So those long-term fixes do not help us with this problem today or even this year. Finally, we have the issue of collective bargaining. We have a good percentage of our village employees that are protected by collective bargaining units. So we can talk all we want about bending that cost curve, but until we can get into a next negotiating cycle with those collective bargaining units, we're stuck with what we have there. There are cost of living expenses that have been far exceeding, the increase in cost of living has exceeded the growth we've had as a taxing body. We've seen real estate sales tax decline, and it's continuing to do so, and all forecasts are that it will continue to do so. So other than looking at new revenue, there is no solution that could get us out of this kick the can down the road, try and stay above 20% fund balance policy that we've been engaging in year after year. I will ask the board to reconsider one issue. In talking with Director Mampy and her staff, two of the potential revenue streams that we did identify in the last revenue hearing were a restaurant tax and an amusement tax. By statute, both of those revenue sources are self-administered, meaning our village staff would have to implement the administration and collection of those revenue streams. I would ask the board to consider, once we come out of executive session or moving forward, that rather than have both of those self-administered programs, we raise the potential restaurant tax by 0.5%, and remove the amusement tax. By having both of them, which is what we contemplated at the end of the revenue hearing, not only are we causing two separate self-administration structures to have to be implemented by the finance department, but we're also double taxing a lot of our businesses. If we bump the one by 0.5% and remove the other, it will be a net increase of $550,000 to our operating budget and would significantly, would cut by half the amount of time our finance department will be administering that program. So I'd ask the board to consider that moving forward. I think it's a much more efficient use of our resources. It gets us into a healthier fund balance posture, moving down that road that we keep talking about, and I think it's fairer to the businesses.
Mayor Peacock. Trustee Russo.
Make a comment, because I've heard this time and time again that this board has kicked the can down the road. And I don't quite understand that, because from my perspective, had we raised taxes in past years, we'd just be looking to make deeper cuts today. So I don't see why we are being called or being accused of having kicked the can down the road. Because we didn't raise property taxes in the past, we didn't need to. We had retail sales tax that was funding a lot of our operating revenues. Those are going away, or they're not going away, but they're certainly being decreased. So I'm just going to take issue with constantly being told that we've kicked the can down the road. We didn't need to raise taxes. And if we do this year, it's because we need to, without making more serious cuts that are going to impact services. And I think that's one thing this board is clear of. We want to have very minimal impact to services.
Mr. Chairman?
Chairman. Trustee Carroll.
The only thing I want to comment on that, why I make reference to, it's been said by other board members. What I'm referring to is, as long as I've been on this board, Director Mampy has shown us a long-term financial forecast that showed by 2019 we would be in the hole. We would be underneath the 20%. And the board had continued to not raise the levy, knowing that that was on the horizon. So that's all I mean by that. We didn't, Trustee Ruzick is 100% right. We're able to get by year after year after year, but there's been kind of a consensus over the last year or two that we start looking at a longer-term solution, and that's why when I say that, I'm talking about we haven't addressed that part of the equation before, and I think we need to now.
Mr. Chairman, I agree totally with Trustee Ruzick and Trustee Carroll, because I've been on the board for a long time, and we never had to. We were not in a situation. We had a healthy retail sales tax base. We had a healthy home rule sales tax base that we were able to do not only our general operating funds, but also our capital projects. Unfortunately, the Village of Orland Park had no control over what's recently happened with the brick and mortars in the community. Unfortunately, there may be some more that will also be in there, but we're also hoping that there'll be brick and mortars that will come in and take over what we have empty. And as saying that, no one's ever asked, there's someone sitting in this room that I know that said they'd rather have their property tax increase than have programs cut or a restaurant tax. So I think it's a situation, as we sit here all the time, one meeting you might make some people happy, the next meeting you might make the other people happy, but in the past, we weren't in a situation that we're in the situation that we are now. Yes, were we warned not to rely so much on retail sales? Yes, and we did and we didn't, because we were very fiscally responsible for what we were doing. Under no circumstances would I be able to sit here and say that we were frivolous with our money and we were out there spending it willy-nilly on whatever we wanted to do. I think we provided an extremely functional village, not only with the staff, with our services, with the events that go on, and I think now we're in a situation that we just have to look at how maybe we structure our events, where maybe they were free, maybe we have to charge a nominal fee, maybe we have to charge a fee to non-residents and not to the residents who are already paying for them through their tax dollars. So I think we still have a long way to go, as Trustee Dodge said, to look at what our other solutions are. Granted, we have to have this done by the 31st of December, so we still have 4 months to get our act together here and come up with some really good solutions, and we have to come up with a solution. And I just agree with her saying we weren't kicking the can down the road. It was predicted that in 2019 we were going to have to make some major decisions, and that's what we're here, what we've been doing and what we're doing tonight.
Mayor Peacock.
Trustee Guerra, let her speak first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, I would just like to piggyback on Trustee Fenton's comments. We have not been kicking it down the road in that, and Trustee Ruzik's, in that we did focus on diversifying our tax base as well. We put a lot of effort and energy, our staff did, into drawing a campus plan out on Route 80 so that we could bring in different businesses, more office-type, better jobs out that way. You know, it's still an effort, it's a work in progress, but we are cognizant of retail having its issues, and we tried to diversify our tax base, and we continue to try to do that. So I don't think anyone here was proceeding recklessly.
Trustee Calandrello?
I guess I won't repeat everyone, but, you know, I think what we're in is we just have a hard decisions to make, and all the board had made good points regarding how many villages can say that we kept our levy flat for 8 years? How many villages can say 7 cents of a dollar goes to the Village of Orland Park of your property tax dollar? My home, I pay less than $4.50 to the Village of Orland Park, and I have the medium-sized home actually of Orland Park statistically. So we need to make those hard decisions of, do we want to cut more family programs? Do we want to try to figure out what the levers are? I mean, the three concerns I always get from residents that approach me is cuts to the park benches or the raising of fees, the cut to pandemonium without me crying about that. I actually had tons of residents, and also cut to LEAF program. These are programs that residents expect from us because we're all in the park. We are the standard, we are the gem of the Southwest community. So we got to figure out what we can do to hit those levers. I mean, I think this board, since I've been around for 4 or 5 plus years, is that I'm very proud of our financial stability of this village, and now it's time to make some hard decisions. But how many villages can say they haven't raised a levy in 8 years? How many villages can say of your property tax bill, 7 cents goes to the Village of Orland Park? Yes, do we get clobbered from some other government entities that you get taxed on? Of course, but 7 cents to your dollar, less than $500 for the medium home goes to the Village of Orland Park. That includes police, that includes all public works, that includes your park district. We don't have a double tax with a park district. So I'm proud of that record, but we do have to make some hard decisions of what do we want life to be in Orland Park? Do we want to continue to be a family community, or just the bare bones? And I look forward to that conversation with everyone.
Trustee Dodge?
Just a couple of comments building out what I had said before. So as I've listened to this discussion over, I don't know, a handful of years, I would tell you that from personal experience, usually the first instinctive reaction is revenue first. Okay? No, not revenue first. So that's point number one. That, again, that's been an assumption around here for a while. Two, Joe, you had mentioned this assumes no new special programs. I'm assuming you guys looked at that strictly from a cost perspective, as opposed to, why don't we have a thoughtful discussion, including with our residents, about the business model of everything that we do. So I think to Kathy Fenton's point, if we need to start charging a few dollars to kind of keep events growing and healthy, great, we need to do that. Third, Trustee Carroll rightfully pointed out that we do have collective bargaining agreements. I also remember when the Great Recession hit, it was my recollection, we did the math. We sat down with the various bargaining units and said, there's basically 2 choices here. We can keep the same number of people working in some way, shape, or form, making less to get to the required savings, or we can have fewer people making the same. Most of the bargaining units came back and agreed and negotiated with us, and we made some changes. If I'm not, Anne-Marie, you'll have to correct me if it furloughs, extra days off, a little bit more on the healthcare insurance, et cetera. So we got through it as a community. Well, clearly what we're going through is not the same thing as the Great Recession and the Great Financial Crisis that hit the U.S., but at some point, one of the levers we have left, if it gets to this much of a crunch, is to, quite frankly, unfund positions. So yes, we have collective bargaining agreements, but just like what we had to do when some of those units would not negotiate with us, we unfunded positions. Is my memory correct?
Yep.
And I don't want to go there. Let's be emphatically clear. Let me say it again. I do not necessarily want to go there, but here we are in terms of the way things are working. And then, Trustee Carroll, I think you might have inadvertently made a case for, let's do this, which is the healthy back and forth, and come up with a short-term solution. One, I'd like some residential input that if we can keep everything the same, but we have to let taxes go up, is everybody okay with that? I think I know the answer to that question. Do we got to go back at it and try and compress our cost structure? And that's just not a headcount discussion. I'd obviously like more staff input. The people doing the job probably have some of the best ideas for how to help us make the job more efficient. I know you're getting that, Joe. And then the third is we've got these studies out there. And so if we're spending the money to get input from consultants with expertise in this, we may need that, and it might not show up until after this budget's cast. And so to kind of tie this up, the residents have already taken a hit, right? We have been reassessed. The rebates are gone. We may or may not have to let the rate stay the same with the total levy going up to capture the growth. And we've got potential issues with abatement. So I just want to be also emphatically clear. I think our residents have taken a number of service reductions and a number of impacts already to their tax load, so to speak, from Orland. So, to my colleagues, we got a hell of a lot of work to do, but just want you to hear me again. I'm going to stick with the same thing I've been saying for decades, because Kathy, if I may, you and I have been pushing for years, right, when it was a previous administration, we had to change the implicit and explicit growth rate in the way our staff costs were going up. Here we are.
Mr. Chairman. Trustee Carroll. Just one thing I wanted to bring up, and I think Mr. Lamargo had something to raise on that as well. When Trustee Dodge talks about we may have to unfund some positions, I'm not speaking out of school. Anyone can look at our agenda and see the reason we're going to an executive session. It's not just for approval of minutes, but it's to talk about specific employees. When we tasked Mr. Lamargo and his budget team to come up with a dollar for dollar expenditure cut to match the anticipated new revenues we talked about, that's the only scenario where he can get there. And that's what we're going to be talking about, specific positions being unfunded. And that's why we have to go into executive session, because as you see on the agenda, that's exactly what we're talking about. So those are the tough decisions, like Trustee Dodge mentioned, that we are already there unless we want to talk about a lopsided approach of more revenue than expenditure cuts, and I don't think anyone on the board wants that.
Any other comments?
Oh, that was a great presentation.
Go.
I just wanted to respond to some of the questions and the statements, and I just wanted to say too, and one of the things that I said in my statement is to Trustee Dodge, we are not stopping here. This is not, hey, I proposed this and the stuff that we go inside there, and we're not looking at anything else. We're absolutely looking at other efficiencies that we can find that would help reduce costs without having a negative impact to the community. So I just want to assure the board that we are not done. You will see some additional reductions as we are going through the operational budgets with each department, having those individual meetings. So we are continuing to go down that path. As far as the insurance costs, we did and we will be moving to the industry standard of what the employee share is versus what it has been currently, what it is currently and everything. Some of those do need to be part of the collective bargaining, negotiated in the collective bargaining, but we are moving towards that, at least with their non-union pieces. We are also looking at the salary structure as well as you had indicated. I will assure you that we are getting input from all the staffs from all levels and everything. And as a matter of fact, some of our reductions have been from the input from staff with that. To Trustee, I'm sorry, just wanted to add one more thing too, that these initial reductions that we're talking about today was to get to that initial fund balance policy of 20%. I mean, that we needed to do that in order to assure that we were at that fund balance policy. As far as the fees, I know Trustee Fenton, we mentioned fees and all that. I will let you know that we do evaluate our fees for all of our different programs and for just fees that we charge for different things. As you've seen over the past year, we have brought a number of fee increases, even as early as tonight, or as late as tonight at the committee meeting with the police department. So we are continuing to look at our fee structure to make sure that we are up to standards without doing that balance of economies of scales there. So we're not scaring people off, but yet we are charging the right amount. that, and we'll continue to evaluate that. And we'll, you know, if the board so wishes to start charging for special events, we can absolutely look into that, and we actually have been starting to look into that. I know we met with Trustee Calandrello, Director Flores met with Trustee Calandrello, and has given him some information on that. And of course, during our meetings that we're having during the operational budgets, we'll continue to address that as well. But the fees and increasing of fees just is not, in reality, is not going to help fill that gap that we have here. So just wanted to. Yes, yes. And we have a sponsorship event that we've identified more sponsorships. We're looking at sponsorship opportunities along with obtaining grants as well to help offset some of those costs. So we are looking at, and we'll continue to look at that. So I just want to address those.
So my comments on this. First, I have a problem with the fact that we don't have any of this information before the meeting. It's very difficult to for anyone here to sit here, get all this information. Now you're asking us for a decision when we have no background information. I can't imagine making decisions of this magnitude without any background beforehand. And you have people on this board, more than one, that have a financial background that can definitely look at this information. And we don't have it. So I think it was Trustee Ruzick that pointed out that this is the first time we've seen this presentation, or maybe it was Trustee Fenton that said that. Secondly, we heard that we didn't give direction. Our direction was pretty clear. In the first budget meeting, and go back and check the tapes, the direction was dollar for dollar and come back with $2 million in revenue and $2 million in cuts. That was the direction that we walked out of that room with. Then in our next meeting, staff proposed $4.3 million in revenue increases to us. Where we went from 2 million to 4.3, I have no idea, but I do know that 4.3 covers both the expense and the revenue side of what the number we were looking for. To Trustee Dodge's point of, it's revenue that's always asked first. The board trimmed that down and again gave the direction that we need dollar for dollar cuts and revenues, which we heard again tonight. I believe the number we came away with that night was about $3.2 million in potential revenue, hypothetically, that we would entertain, but we needed to see dollar for dollar cuts.
Including capital though.
Correct.
Yeah.
We need to see dollar for dollar cuts. What we've seen is tonight is we've got $1.2 million of cuts. And yes, we've brought down the revenue request down, but it's still not dollar for dollar. So I totally disagree with the fact that we have not given clear direction, because I believe that our direction in all of these meetings has been fundamentally very clear. Some of the other points that were brought up, you mentioned a couple times no new special events. To Trustee Fenton's point, if we can come up with creative ways to do new special events where we don't cost, where we actually make a little bit of money or we don't spend money. And a perfect example is we have the hoedown coming up on the 21st, which I don't remember ever coming across us for approval, but staff's decided to do it, but it's going to be budget neutral or budget positive, so I'm okay with it. So it's okay to do events like that. Regarding some of the cuts of programs that were mentioned, Pandemonium, anyone who, feel free, Trustee Calandrello, to send them to my office if they have issues, because I'd be happy to work through the numbers with them. We saw the numbers. The Pandemonium was, with the numbers that we saw, was a relatively easy cut to make with the number of attendees versus how much money we were losing on it, because of the setup time and the time to take it down. LEAF program, similarly, we know that's going to be a big deal. But to provide that for the entire village would have cost us millions of dollars, and it's being provided for a very small percentage. And that was out of whack, and we were in a position where all of a sudden, in fact, I didn't even know it existed until the request for those pieces of equipment came in, which were, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $900,000 for the two pieces of equipment at the time. And that's when the discussion happened. So some of those cuts, yes, there are some residents that don't like those cuts, but when you look at the totality, they were cuts that were relatively easy to make because of the cost-benefit analysis of those. And I'd be happy to discuss that with anyone who has that issue, so you can send them my way, and I'll be happy to walk through the numbers with them and ask them what they would do if they were in our position. Because to trustee Dodge's point, I don't believe that anyone's going to be running around saying, oh, raise my taxes. There are opportunities, as you've mentioned, to find efficiencies, to cut. We need to look at doing those things. But to me, it is almost impossible tonight to give you a specific answer when we don't have all the background information that we need. We can continue to move you forward in the right direction, but we're not going to be able to give you specific, concrete answers based on what we see. At least that's my opinion.
Would I be able to respond to
Sure.
some of those? So information beforehand, I guess I'm a little confused because the information that's up there is the same information that we discussed at the last revenue meeting as far as these. This is just what that was. I did discuss with every official, and did mention that we would not be giving some of this information in there because most of the information was on personnel-related issues. However, I had a meeting or spoke to everybody. Mr. Mayor, we spoke last week in your office about the specific items that I was looking at, and as far as reductions and these are reductions specifically that we had talked about. So I guess I'm a little confused on that point, but because it's a closed session item and because it's so sensitive, and it really was a moving target, up until Friday, there were things that we were looking at what we can do. There's another program in there that we were able to not do because we were able to find some additional savings someplace else that had even less impact on the community and the organization as a whole. Dollar for dollar, I believe we did do that. We identified there was 1.049 potential additional revenue. We came back with $1.2 million in reductions. We did not, we kind of looked at, in conferring with our chairperson, we looked at the capital revenue differently, as differently from the operating expenditures that we had there. As far as the 4.3 million increase, those were just options. We just said what we could potentially raise. We were never suggesting, and if it was misinterpreted, then my apologies, and we'll make sure that it's clear next time. But there was never any intention for the board to increase revenues by $4.3 million. We were just giving options of what these different revenue sources could potentially bring in. The amount of money that the board might want would be completely up to them. Special events with the hoedown happening, we saw that as an opportunity because we're doing our sponsorship event that day, that we would just take advantage of having, the tent and all that there at pretty much at no cost. At some point, we will make the call whether or not we will move forward with it based on ticket sales that would then not cost the village any dollars or anything like that. So that was just an opportunity that fell upon us, and we thought we might take advantage of it. Just once again, just try and give it another different look at it.
So I would respond to that, Joe. The hoedown, as I pointed out, I have no issues with. I think those are the kinds of things we need to look to do. But I'm looking at your potential new revenues right there, and it totals to me to $1.597 million, and versus 1.267 in cuts. So it's not a dollar for dollar, unless I'm missing something in the math that's up there.
I think
which I don't think that I am. I mean, I'm looking at 5 new revenue sources.
Police pension separate.
Okay, you've got 5 new revenue sources that also total to $1.597. Police pension, it's still new revenue. It's still tax levy. It's still taxes. So now we're going to say that, we only need to make cuts unless it has to do with pensions, then we don't have to make cuts. I think what we're saying is we need dollar for dollar revenue. We were very clear, 2 million and 2 million. And what we got in the revenue discussion was we got 4.3 brought to us. What we got today in the expense discussion is 1.2 brought to us. I mean, those are just the facts as I see them. So I think the board, and what was said earlier on was that we weren't really all that clear. I think, to Trustee Dodge's comments and others, I think we were really clear every time we've had these meetings, what we wanted. So I don't think there was any ambiguity in that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry.
Trustee Calendro.
Do you, just to kind of, do you want me to maybe make a motion to go to executive session, or do you want to go through the public agenda and then come back? I just want to see how you like us to do it.
We will go through the public agenda first, and then we'll go into executive session like we always do.
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Dodge.
Just one other comment where, I think, I'm pretty sure we all agree we've got a lot of work to do over the next couple of years. I think I'll pick up on Trustee Carroll's point. There's a short, medium, and a long-term solution here. We're not going to get it all done in one budget year, but I think we're going to have to take the hard decisions to move in that direction. So I think we're all probably in agreement we're going to have to do some work. Exactly how we solve this problem in the short and medium term feels to me to be a trickier discussion than how we solve it in the longer term, to be honest with you, because it's going to be virtually impossible to impact what happens to American retail, given everything that's going on as we try and evolve Orland to more of an experience location. And then, as we go down this pathway, this is, these are the hard conversations we've needed to have. My recollection from that budget meeting was, I think you guys came in with numbers that attacked the longer term problem, because you presented a fairly lengthy list of new revenue, which is, of course, why, to me, it was a hypothetical simulation exercise in the budget, Mike. And I get it. I mean, kudos to you guys for trying to be thoughtful to solve the long-term problem. From my perspective, it read like you have to do this as opposed to let's go at this another way. So, I'm not casting blame. I'm just saying, as we work through this process, and I'd like to keep this as public as possible, I think the crux of the issue here for all of us, for us as elected officials, for the staff that we ask to do the job, and for our residents, which is, what do we want to transform Orland to over the next, call it 3 to 5 years, and at what price, and who's paying that price? So it's just way too easy for public entities to say, let's raise a restaurant tax because it's mostly not us paying it. Well, that was the same argument I heard a million years ago about the sales tax. World's changed. So I'm just deeply sensitive to what we migrate to and how we get there. So I don't have a problem, quite frankly, thinking this short, medium term, while you guys get the pressure from us to say, Joe, you and your staff, you're not there yet in terms of fixing the cost structure. So I just want to put that out there as I think that's my wrap-up comment on this.
Understood.
Trustee Fenton. Okay.
Chairman.
Trustee Carroll.
Just kind of also to wrap up, like Trustee Dodge said, I just want to defend staff a little bit, and I think Trustee Dodge said it just now, but I want to make sure they weren't recommending $4.4 million in new revenue. The board told them two things at the pre-budget meeting that we had upstairs. Number one, we didn't want to do a short-term solution. We wanted to look at a long-term solution that would keep us above the 20% fund balance policy. Several members of this board said that, and that was their direction when we walked out of the pre-budget meeting. Number two, specific revenue sources were narrowed down at the pre-budget meeting, and we asked staff to review those and come back to us with what the potential revenue amounts would be if we were to incorporate those. So the 4.4 was the a la carte menu that we asked staff to bring to us with no recommendations as to which we chose. Where I somewhat disagree with the two of you is we did identify some revenue streams, and that Mr. Mayor, you might be right, that might be 1.5 instead of 1.04 when I just did the math real quick on my sheet here, and I'll ask Director Mampy.
Yeah, but you have to take we're considering the police pension levy as separate because it does not fund operations. It goes directly into the police pension trust fund. I understand it's a tax increase, absolutely, it increases the levy, but it doesn't fund operations at all. And that's why we segregated it.
Tell that to the taxpayers.
I just said, I understand it goes into the levy.
That's our issue.
But just to finish my thought, though, the issue that I see is troubling staff, and I can completely understand this. Moving forward tonight, we really need to give them some direction on revenue. Is it finalized till we finalize our budget? Of course not. But their role of bringing us a budget through the next 2 or 3 hearings after this one is fully dependent on what we tell them on revenue. So whatever we decide, we have to give them some consensus tonight as to what we're moving forward on, as opposed to the hypothetical exercise that you called yourself out, Trustee Dodge, for saying that. That's what they got from us, that, well, yeah, maybe we'll consider this, maybe we'll consider that. We really need to give them something more concrete in order to move forward with the budget process, or else we're kind of spinning our wheels.
Trustee Dodge?
I think the people of Orland Park tonight are treated by 2 guys with not much hair.
Yes.
One's a lawyer, one's a consultant, and we're both determined to have the last word, so here goes. I distinctly remember the slide at that budget presentation saying, in order to stay above your mandated fund policy, you need to impose all these taxes. Now, if my memory is incorrect, correct me, but I'm pretty sure that slide absolutely said, to get to this number, you need to adopt all these taxes. So that's point number 1. If I'm wrong, I will apologize and find some way to hypothetically eat my words. And 2, you know, Mike, we're going to keep going round and round on this one in a respectful way. What you just said is we got to give an answer on revenue first. No.
So the beauty of sitting in this chair is I actually do get the last word.
Maybe we'll let you have the last word tonight.
And as I recall in the last meeting, we did a hypothetical of how do we solve this 5 years, so solve it long-term if we went 50-50, if we did half revenue, half expenses. It was 1.8 million each way. If we would have, it was 1.8, I believe, for 3.6 total. Is that correct?
That is what was said on the tape at the end.
Correct, and that pretty much got us to just over the 20% reserve balance in 5 years out. Interesting enough, that 1.8 is a couple $100,000 less than the 2 million we initially asked for. So I think if we continue to work towards that ask, and I realize it's hard. These things are hard. They're hard in business. They're hard everywhere. But that's where we're at, because it is not, this is not a recession. This is a fundamental change in how the village is funded because of the changing retail environment. So it's hard. I get it. And I appreciate all the hard effort on it. But to ask us to commit tonight is going to be pretty challenging if we don't see the cuts that go along with it. With that said, Joe, I did have a question for you because it was in our notes, and I just want to have it explained when the board's here, so we don't have to have the conversation amongst 7 of us. So, 2 budget meetings ago, we talked about one particular efficiency issue, which was the driving back and forth to eat lunch. Could you just explain the solution to that?
Yes.
For us?
Actually, it was in manager's notes, and essentially, we're going to do a straight 8-hour day, and that we actually did a micro business that put together, and we got both staff and management together to come up with that solution. I asked Assistant Village Manager Keating to head up that research on that, and he did, and I defer to Mr. Keating. He can talk a little bit more about the details of that program, but essentially we're going to go to straight 8s, which would eliminate 2 15-minute breaks, and we'd go with the paid half-hour lunch, I believe. Mr. Keating?
Okay.
That's correct, Joe. The micro business was put together by a multitude of supervisory staff from the 3 different departments. And one of the things that they identified is the field workers, because of the nature of their work out in the field, would have to break down the job site in some instances and drive back to, it was the travel time back to the Public Works Department. Clean up due to that nature, and based on the efficiencies, they did identify, even staff, the line staff, saying that it wasn't probably the most productive, most efficient way to operate. So by agreement, and this is a beta test at this point, by mutual agreement, what the staff agreed to, and the supervisory staff, that eliminate the 2 15-minute breaks and then have the paid lunch. Now, they would eat out in the field, so there isn't going to be no breakdown. It's going to be a field lunch. There's going to be the ability, if they're working in a particular area on the far north side of town, for whatever reason, if they needed to take a break based on weather conditions or hydration breaks or restroom breaks, that they would not drive all the way back, travel time back to the Public Works Department. They would then do that at a local business, whether it be a restaurant or a gas station. So at this point, it's a beta test. It's going to be reviewed on a regular basis. They did identify in some instances that there's a possibility if it's a major emergency, let's say a water main break, and they were able to break free 2 staff members to patronize a local business, that would be allowed. So I think it was successful. And the village manager reviewed it. We had meetings afterwards, and by mutual agreement with the collective bargaining units input, that we would see how this would go and see if this would increase efficiencies within the departments.
Any comments? So I have two things. Great that you worked on solving the problem. I think we talked about how that's very inefficient to break down jobs. It was something I'm familiar with. So I'm glad we did that. I do have two concerns just to monitor. I realize it's a beta test, but these are 2 concerns to monitor. One is, I guess it all boils down to one concern, which is they are doing physical labor in the field. And so sometimes those breaks are pretty important to keep someone physically able to keep doing that work. And trading that, and I get the trading that off for paying their lunch in the half hour. It's just, that's something to monitor is, are we better off having those 15-minute breaks and not paying them for lunch, but they still do lunch out in the field like where they're doing? But I get it. I think it's great that you came up with a solution, and I'm looking forward to hearing how it proceeds. Any other comments? All right, we can move on to the next agenda item.
Village Code Amendment, Title 7, Chapter 4, Section 745, License Required Food Service Ordinance.
Joe, did you have something else in your presentation?
I was...
Before we move on?
So I just wanted to just show the last slide with the reductions that we made, just to show you where we were as far as we were with the
getting
the
close.
fund balance policy. As you can see there, we're good all the way until 2022, and of course this is not factoring in any additional staff that may take advantage of the early retirement incentive program and some other assumptions.
Or
that are
some of
not
the recovery of some of the retail and that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, that looks pretty good relative to what we've seen. And I think if we had to solve for the problem 5 years from now, I think we've got some time to do that in non-drastic ways.
So I just wanted to point that out there.
Sorry, we didn't know there was another slide.
Yeah, no worries, thank you.
Okay.
These are better assumptions.
5330.
Trustee Fenton.
Move to pass ordinance number 5330, entitled an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 4, Section 7-4-5 of the Orland Park Village Code, license required food service.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Metro Commuter Station Concession Services.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Ruzick.
I move to approve the selection of City Roasters Orland Bakery as the concessionaire at the 143rd and 153rd Street train stations and approve authorizing the village manager to execute the necessary documents.
Second.
Any questions or comments? So I have one. Did we go out for bid on this, or how did this come about? That was just my question.
We did an RFP for this, and we had 3 individuals that submitted proposals for this, and so we felt that the people that we're recommending were best fit for taking care of that. They're both local businesses, and it just is something that we don't get any revenue. They barely make any revenue on it, but it's just a service that they get.
Were the other businesses non-local?
I believe there
I
was one.
apologize. My apologies, would not go for RFP. We solicited proposals
Okay.
for that.
See, what happened, Mayor, is actually Ahmad Zayed kind of led this program once on short notice. Once we were notified by Doughboys that they were closing their doors effective July 20th, I believe. And it was due to an illness in the family that they had to shut their doors. So what we did is we approached the market in the park, approached 7 potential vendors that might be interested in providing that service. Out of those 7 that were notified, they were given the terms and specifications. Out of those 7, 5 were provided a site visit that actually showed up for the site visit at the metro station at 143 and the metro station at 153, 153rd Street. Out of those 5, 3 submitted proposals. One of those proposals is before you. It's a kind of a new partnership between Orland Bakery that's been in Orland Park, I believe, for 40 years, and in the new one of the companies, City Roasters. City Roasters is, I know the principal, president, or CEO is based out of, I believe it's LaGrange. He's based out of LaGrange. 2 of the other proposals that were submitted, one was out of LaGrange also, and the other one had a Orland Park mailing address. So the selection team, 3 individuals, staff were on the selection team. They conducted the interviews of those 3 proposals and felt that the one before you was best suited for Orland Park.
And there's no cost or revenue associated with this for the village?
There is zero.
Just making sure someone provides the service?
That's correct.
Okay. That was my question. Call the roll.
Trustee Rizek.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Guerra.
Aye.
Trustee Carroll.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Will be signed in.
Is there anybody that wishes to speak? Bob, do you want your 10 minutes? Okay. All right. So, board comments, Trustee Fenton.
None at this time, other than I just want to clarify, I was not upset that I didn't have this information. I just now will always bring my paperwork that I received from the previous meeting with me, so I have it, so I don't have to look up there, which is fine too. And I know staff has been working very hard on this, and it is a difficult year for us with all the brick and mortars, like I said before, that have closed. And you're doing a great job so far. Just continue to work on it, and I know we'll come to the best conclusion for the residents in the Village of Orland Park.
Trustee Calandrello.
Just very brief, just want to thank staff for a great Town of West concert. The weather held out for us. It was a great family event. And congratulations to the staff. And I think it starts to slow down a little bit with outside events. Just joking. But just want to thank everyone for their support and on that event. And hopefully everyone had a great Labor Day. Thank you.
Trustee Rizek.
I just wanted to give a plug to the Orland School District 135 Foundation is having their inaugural walk-run this Saturday at Centennial Park, and you can show up and sign up that day. This is the first time they're doing it, and I think it's to support their anti-bullying campaign. So that's it.
Trustee Guerra.
No comment.
Trustee Carroll.
I want to congratulate the Finance Department. We had our audit presentation at committee today, and they got another clean letter from our auditor that really kind of applauded them for their length of their CAFR and their transparency and accuracy therein. So they did a great job. While we're on that subject, I know staff has been through a lot trying to get all these reductions put together in expenditures, and the budget process so far has been fruitful, but it's been very frustrating for all of us, and we've got some tough decisions to make as a board, and that it's translated onto extra work for all of you, and I appreciate everything you've done.
Trustee Dodge.
Just a couple of comments, probably primarily for the press and the project that we've had working for a while in Orland Park. We did a feasibility study to look at a multi-use sports facility, and we're getting ready to bring it back before the public. This is voted on back in February, and I guess the summary would be it's got a favorable business model. We have a lot of work to do to build a facility like that in town, and as some of the staff could attest, if they were parents involved in traveling sports, They've probably seen more of the Midwest than they realized. But we've got an opportunity in Orland to attract a large multi-sports facility in town that could help support our retail and our restaurants, right? It's very much part of this migration we've talked about as a full board towards more entertainment uses. We would have to do this as a public-private partnership because it is potentially a big investment, but it's in addition to building out some of our existing facilities. So we were excited that the consultant came back and said, yeah, this is doable when you look at the marketplace. And when you look at the amenities Orland Park already has for this thing, we've got great access to the major highways. We've got the retail shopping base. You know, we've got a number of parcels that are open space, you know, that we could do this on. So you'll see more of this as we go forward. But one of the goals here is to make this thing self-funding in a public-private partnership. We don't want this to be a drain on the residents, but we also need it to be a boost, if you will, to our local economy, given how we've developed over time. So stay tuned. There'll be more coming as we get through the details of this, and we'll bring it out to the folks in Orland Park so they understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and it's going to take a number of years and a number of hands and folks on the board to help pull this together. So excited about this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So a couple of things. I want to thank Director Flores and her staff for their hard work this weekend for the concert on Sunday, which it was very hot out there, but they did a nice job. Also, I got a note from a resident about a tree that had gotten struck by lightning and became hazardous in one of our parks next to their house. He gave kudos to that crew for coming out and taking care of that. So thanks to them as well for that hard work. I want to remind everybody that budget discussions, it's easy when it's a gravy train and everything's growing and you're adding, 1,000 or 300 homes every year, and everybody's adding retail like, we saw in the 80s and 90s, other than, dips and recessions and things like that. We're fundamentally changing right now, our economy. So these decisions are challenging. And therefore, these budget discussions are going to be long and drawn out. They've been good discussions. I don't think there's been a lot of animosity in the discussions. They've been very, very open, and everyone has very valid thoughts and opinions on this. But these are hard decisions that we're going to have to make because it's the reality which we face. And I think it's important that we're transparent, which we are. It's I think it's being live streamed from 2 different places right now. It's also on audio, so these discussions are very transparent, very open, but sometimes they're long and they're drawn out because these decisions are hard. It's not a tiny little village. We have almost 60,000 residents, and we have 300 full-time employees plus another 500 plus part-time employees. And a lot of roads, a lot of everything else, and we have to deal with all of that. We have to deal with the operations, the capital, and all of that. So when we face this kind of a fundamental shift in how our village is funded and how our economy is operating, we need to make some hard calls. And it's probably calls that haven't had to we haven't had to make for a while, and this board has to make them. And as I pointed out last year, the decisions we make in the next year to 2 years are going to fundamentally put Orland Park on the right track or the wrong track, depending on the decisions we make. So this is really important for this board to make the right decisions. So if we didn't take this time to have these conversations, we wouldn't be doing our jobs. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenton.
Move to go into executive session for A, approval of minutes, B, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performances, or discipline of specific village employees.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, that was fun. Next we could stab ourselves.